The hair loss treatments. Big topic. Okay, this is probably the last video I'm ever going to make on finasteride, minoxidil, dutasteride, the heavier stuff, microneedling. The main ones, of course, right? Fin and Mim. I get asked, you know, should you take them? Do they work? Now, this is the concept that nobody talks about, that everybody needs to understand. And this is where I come from. This is my mindset on it all. And I think this should be your consideration when you're deciding, okay? Because there's two paths, right? That guys experience when they're balding. You're going to maybe cross over, you know, from one to the other. But you either look to treat it with these drugs, finasteride, the solutions like minoxidil. We get a hair transplant, of which you obviously need to do these drugs also. Or you just look to accept it, okay? You basically go bald. And I get a lot of the people here will hate on the acceptance path. You know, maybe vice versa. I don't see that so much. But does finasteride work? Blah, blah, blah. This is the thing I need guys to understand. We're not even talking side effects. We're not even talking any of that stuff at the moment. Everything we do in life as humans is to either move further away from pain, okay? You move further away from pain, or you're trying to move closer to pleasure. All of the decisions we make in life are because of these two things here. Now, when we start balding, we experience pain. We experience a lot of emotional pain. This is anxiety, this is fear, this is worry, this is all of the things that are associated. This is the distress. That's what happens when we start balding. Okay, and whether you're on the treatment side or the acceptance side, there is no debate on that. There is no denying that what we experience is emotional pain. Therefore, when we are deciding on which one of these routes to go down, what we are trying to achieve is relief. What we want is relief from this emotional pain. So for those who are looking at taking the medications, okay, that is what you are truly trying to do here. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing we need to understand, okay? When you're looking at these treatments, at its core, what you're really trying to do is relieve yourself from that emotional pain. Okay, so when people are saying finasteride really works, you know, and all the rest of it, the reason why it's worked, okay, is because the problem it has solved is it has solved your emotional pain that was a result of your balding. Now, how does it do this? Right, the guy who is taking the finasteride, who was worried about going bald, distressed by it, freaking out by it, catastrophizing about all the things that were going to go wrong in his future if he went bald. You were trying to get relief from that emotional pain. If then you start taking the hair loss medication and you take your progress pictures and you can see that maybe you've regrown a bit of that hair, or maybe the hair loss has stopped, you know, you've taken like 3-month pictures, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, okay? Even the hair transplant, same thing. You are now, in your mind, you feel less distressed and more confident that your balding is, you know, less visible. It has, you know, stopped falling out more, so that problem isn't going to get worse. And you have used these treatments, these medical treatments, to solve your emotional pain. That is why they are working. Okay, that is what they are truly working on. Okay, so if you ask me, do they work? Yes. You know, for many guys, if they feel satisfied by the results, you know, that's not going to be everyone, but if they feel satisfied by the results of the medications, then they have solved their problem with balding, which is that emotional pain. And for some people, it's worth it. For some people, taking that daily medication, that is how they feel like it's best for them to treat their balding problem, which, like I said again, I can't stress that enough, is that emotional pain. You know, they can kind of put that balding problem, put that anxiety to the back of their mind, or the anxiety over them, you know, losing their hair, going bald, whatever, is reduced to the level that they can get on and live their life normally. Now, I'll dive into this a bit more in a minute, my own reasons why that path wasn't attractive to me. And I think this is the main consideration, is because essentially what you do when you go down this path, of course, because you are using these medications to reduce that anxiety, you are then reliant on these in order to keep that anxiety low, okay? And you become dependent on them. So because the motivation behind taking the medication was that emotional pain, relief from the emotional pain, in order to be relieved from that, you have to continue to take the medication. And therefore, you become dependent on that medication in order to relieve yourself from the psychological pain that balding had brought onto you. In my personal opinion, there are a few issues with that. Now, some guys, that's completely fine. They think, you know, whatever it takes. If that's what I need to do in order to just feel good and live my life normally, then I'll take the medication. And the first thing that just didn't appeal to me in that sense is it felt very strange to me to take a medication that would alter my sort of physiology in order to solve what it was essentially a psychological issue. Okay, so that was the first thing that just seemed off for me personally. And I just had this sense in my gut of like, well, if this is a psychological problem, if the motivation here is relief from this anxiety, then surely there's things I can do to combat that doesn't involve taking medication. Of course, that's the road of acceptance. We'll get onto that in a minute. The other main one, you know, and I didn't want to be dependent. This sort of surrendering myself over to the use of this medication, again, to protect me from that anxiety. I didn't want to be in a position where I was dependent on taking medication to essentially feel good about myself. I just personally didn't want to put myself in that position. Before all of this hell stuff, I had considered myself a relatively confident guy. However, if that was true, if I was truly confident in myself, just noticing that my hair was falling out would not have affected me to the extent that it had, you know? And so that sort of made me recognize that, you know, I probably need to work on that. I probably need to work on becoming more secure in myself and just sort of improving my overall self-esteem. And that was never going to happen if I had just used medication to sort of push away that anxiety and push away this psychological problem that I was facing, which was the balding. Back when I was sat in my apartment, first started losing my hair, my confidence, my self-esteem was being compromised because my hair that I'd obviously attached so much of my confidence and self-worth to, just by the very, you know, happenings of nature, was being taken away from me. So for me, when it came to choosing, do I want to treat it or do I want to accept it? Okay, I never wanted to be in a position again where I wasn't, or I didn't feel in full control of my own self-esteem and my own self-confidence, okay? I never wanted to put myself in that position again. And eventually, of course, I just got tired of feeling scared, feeling afraid, feeling insecure, and letting hair loss and balding and all that insecurity, all that fear, okay, all that fear, I got tired of living my life like that. I got completely sick of it, completely tired of it. I knew that I had to truly face all of these fears, all of these insecurities, all of this anxiety, all of this worry over balding. I knew that I had to truly face up to it in order to just get rid of all of this, get rid of it all, completely overcome the issue. And I truly believe that that is done through total acceptance. Okay, so how does the acceptance route solve the same problem? Okay, again, this is obviously the road that I'm on and the road that I promote, because I feel like once you reach this point of complete acceptance, and I'm going to show you how now, there's no ifs, there's no buts. And when you actually develop this self-esteem that comes from traveling the path of acceptance, that can never be taken away from you. Okay, that can never be compromised. And that's why I think that this is such a fantastic pursuit. Confidence, like genuine belief that you can totally handle the balding and being bald, and it will never stop you doing anything you want. That belief, because you've shown yourself, can never be taken away from you. Acceptance works in the same way, and again, I argue better, because once you achieve it, it can't be taken away from you, it can't be compromised, by what is essentially exposure therapy. Okay, exposure therapy. This common in the world, in like cognitive behavioral therapy, psychology. If you know anything about psychology, okay, you'll know about this. Okay, exposure therapy. And what this is all of the things that you feel anxious about, okay, all of the things that we feel anxious about, all that emotional pain that I mentioned at the start, anxious thoughts. Again, you think your life's going to be over, you think your dating life's going to be over, you think the missus is going to leave you, you think people are going to laugh at you. You know the massive list, boys, okay? If you're balding and you're worried about it, you know the list is huge, okay? Even just down to people commenting or laughing, you know, makes you feel anxious and makes you feel awkward and just uncomfortable in your gut. You're in the pub and, you know, all your mates are talking about hair or something, and you know, you kind of like shrink backwards a little bit. You kind of, shrivel up inside a bit because you don't want that topic to come onto you or whatever. You know the feelings, boys. All of the things you're afraid of. And then, of course, if you've seen any of my videos, you know that we do these things, like taking the medications or hiding with certain styles, putting the hats on, the hair fibers, all the products that are promoted to you. Those are safety behaviors, and they protect you short term from this anxiety. Okay, so really quick example, in my own life, in my own experience, I was concerned when I was sat in my university classroom that someone behind me was going to see my bald spot. Okay, that made me feel anxious if there was people behind me. What did I do to make me feel safe from that? I sat at the back of the classroom. That was one of my safety behaviors, so that no one was behind me, and that reduced my anxiety. Short term, that reduced my anxiety short term. And again, for the record, I felt like going down the treatment route was really just that. It would reduce my anxiety, but only short term. Okay, only short term. Only for as long as I was doing the daily medication or whatever, you know, which again was not what I wanted. I wanted to completely overcome it, completely overcome all of this. I wanted to move on from it. I wanted to not have it be a thing ever again, compromise how I felt about myself, never have it dictate anything in my life again. You know the score, boys. So short term, these safety behaviors protect us from that anxiety. It's just so important to understand this, boys, okay? So important. What essentially you can do in the acceptance path is, I need to know in my brain, if my anxious thought is that someone's going to see my balding and laugh at it, and I'm going to feel mortified by that. I'm going to feel self-conscious. I'm going to feel embarrassed. I'm not going to be able to handle it if that happens. What exposure therapy essentially is you have to expose yourself to that anxiety, be vulnerable to it, okay, to an extent that you can handle, enough for you to see with your own eyes, with your own belief, like truly see it to believe it, that actually these fears, these anxious fears, these anxious thoughts aren't going to come true. So let's use another example really quickly. Again, for the medication user, okay, essentially what he's doing there is that he's using that medication to have the physical sort of balding concealed, you know, in a way that he feels satisfied with, to the point where he no longer basically fears that balding is going to ruin his life. Okay, if we just put it in a nutshell like that. So that's why it's worked. Now, back to the acceptance stuff that we're talking about here. And what nobody talks about this. Everyone's just talking about, hey, if your hairline's receding, you know, just cover it up and then you're sweet, bro. It's like, no, that's only short-term solution. That's only a short-term reduction in the anxiety. Okay, we're talking about completely mastering it here, completely moving past it. I digress once more. So acceptance. Let's use the example of the guy, big one here. You think your dating life or your love life is going to be over. Let's just put romantic life. If you're a balding man, heterosexual male, romantic life. If one of your biggest anxious fears is you think that no woman is going to be attractive to you. That's what you fear. If that's your biggest anxious thought, the way the acceptance route would work, okay, is to not hide your balding in any way with any safety behaviors. You see this? Pretty apparent that I'm bald, bro, okay? Pretty obvious that I've lost my hair. Have a good look at that, lads. Have a good look. Have a bloody good look at that. Then, all you need to do is look like this, which is what many people consider the worst case scenario. If you're going bald, ending up like me is like the ultimate fear. So basically you go bald, and then you go out and you live your life, no safety behaviors, no hiding, the complete opposite to all of that. You're just literally this. You are the worst case scenario walking around. And what do? You go and you get a relationship, or you get a date, or you sit in the middle of the classroom, what happens? Like you said, you get a relationship, or no one comments, nothing bad happens, you get the job that you want, you have the relationships that you want, you have the banter with the boys down the pub, you just live life, you just live your damn life without hiding. You live your life, okay, fully like this, fully just out there, fully bold, even with a bit of this, a bit of showing, right? So this is so obvious that what is going on here. There's no concealment going on. And with that, boys, you're exposed to the potential, okay, of these anxious things happening. And when they don't happen, okay, when they don't happen, you no longer feel anxious about it. You no longer fear these things happening. You can see with your own eyes, oh, I can get a relationship. I can go on a date. I can have a family. I can get the job that I want. So all of those things that we mentioned in the start, that huge list of everything that you're terrified of, you put yourself in the vulnerable position. You expose yourself to the potential of those fears happening. And what happens? They don't happen. And you can literally then see with your own eyes, the anxiety literally just disappears. It melts away. Say, for example, if you think you're going to look really ugly, or like you think you're going to look bad in the mirror if you see yourself bald or with a shaved head. And when you shave it and you have a bald head and you look in the mirror and you see with your own eyes, actually, this doesn't look anywhere near as bad as I feared it was going to. You know, if that was your anxious thought, what happens to it? Gone. That's no longer an issue for you. That disappears and you no longer ever need to worry about it. You no longer fear it. That's what the game of balding is, boys. The game of balding is all about handling the anxiety. Okay, so if you ask me, does Fin work? Does Min work? Does whatever work? It all works in a sense that you're trying to achieve the same thing, that is to reduce, okay? Reduce that anxiety, okay? Reduce that emotional pain. It's just you're doing it in a way that is using medication. When you're using that medication every day, the guy that's doing that, he then feels like, okay, you know what? Balding is no longer something that I need to worry about. And on the same side, if you choose to go down the acceptance path, what does this guy do? He goes bald, he lives his life, and he realizes balding is no longer something that I need to worry about. He puts himself in all of those situations. He looks fine. His relationships are fine, works fine. All the aspects of life are no issue, no problem. And what happens, he's literally solved all of this. He no longer fears it. And it's literally a non-issue. Balding for this guy who reaches acceptance is literally a non-issue. And again, my own personal experience, of course, I think this is the best place to be. I just needed to make this video so that more of you can understand the concept of what the game of balding is truly about and what these things are really doing. Okay, and I think this is the final time I'm ever going to comment about medications or whatever, because hopefully once you understand this, you realize it's not actually an argument of like what's better, what's worse. It's just whether you think you can accept it or you can't. If you can't, travel this road until you either just go along like that forever, or you get fed up with it and you want to come onto the path of acceptance and do it that way. But really, you're trying to achieve the same thing. I think this is a great place to start. Like I said, it can once you get there, it can never be compromised. Once you see that you no longer need to fear something, you don't just then magically start being afraid of it again. It's gone, okay? I think that's just an amazing thing. And like I've said in older videos, you actually end up like more confident than you were before because you realize how capable you actually are. Get a bit of a boost from doing something that is difficult, like putting yourself in those vulnerable, scary positions, okay, without these safety behaviors, but you have to do it in order to see that you can accept it, to see that you no longer need to fear it. That's a difficult thing to do. And what happens when you do difficult things and you succeed in them? You get more confident. You know that you're able, self-worth, everything just goes up. And that was definitely my experience. I know that it's the experience for so many guys out there. I'm just here to see so many more people win. Look, if you want help with that, if you want help with my sort of expertise, which is the acceptance path, head to baldcafe.com. Okay, it's all there, and I can help you one-on-one with your situation, wherever you're at with it. But I hope that has given you kind of the different framing for it. I hope that's given you a better understanding of what's truly going on here. This is something that you can get past. This is something that doesn't need to hold you back, okay? Okay, sure, it's scary, it's uncertain, it's all of those things, but you're more than that. You're more capable than that fear has you. You know, and I've got a bit of a distaste, a bit of a bad taste in my mouth about a lot of the hair loss industry, because really what it does is it actually keeps you stuck in that anxiety cycle. It keeps you stuck in that using the safety behaviors to just feel a little bit better, but never truly solving the issue, never truly relieving yourself fully from that fear, that anxiety, that emotional pain. I really see the acceptance path as doing that. Yes, it can take time, but it's very possible for you. Here to see you boys win. Hope that's been good. Hope that's been useful. I will see you in the next video.